welcome everybody to episode number 16 of the Merck at Work podcast. It's my pleasure to have Zovan Ramsarup join us today from Provias Healthcare Consultancy. We met Zovan, I guess it was around 2020, and
Yeah,
we've stayed in touch since then. So welcome, Zovan.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. It's a
Yeah,
pleasure.
I think you might be the official furthest distance participant of the Merc at Work podcast. Why don't you let the folks know where you're at?
Okay, great. I'm here in Trinidad and Tobago. The beautiful island. We're well known for our carnival, lovely beaches as well. Um, Lots of ecotourism, although it's not predominantly known. And yeah, we're a vibrant community here, a small isle, but have a robust mark on the map despite small stature. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Right before we hopped on here, we were talking about the weather and how it's warm all year. So I don't know, you might be getting some people reaching out to you to set up some vacations as well.
Oh, I'll be happy to give some advice, Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mentioned that I think we met around 2020. I believe it was around the time we were launching our software platform, um,
Yeah.
Arrivo, and you were one of the first ones to have a look at it. So we've maintained contact since then, and have always enjoyed our time talking about healthcare consulting and all those kind of things with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think around that time, I was looking at new ways to improve the cost effectiveness of medical equipment management and maintenance.
Yeah,
And then, during my deep dives, I came across Merck and I was like, oh, this is a perfect fit because, I mean, it was given a lot of those indicators that you don't normally see in a maintenance management system.
hmm
I thought it would have been a nice a parallel system or something that could have been seamlessly work in tandem with a CMS system. So yeah, it was definitely something that I was quite excited about. Yeah.
yeah. Um, That's great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in healthcare, how you made your way to Trinidad and Tobago, some of those kind of things?
Yeah. Well, I'm a national Trinidad and Tobago, so that's why I'm here in Trinidad. I would just take that off the box. In
Yeah.
terms of yeah, it's a bit weird because I always wanted to be a petroleum engineer because I mean, Trinidad is known for being one of the oldest, at least in this hemisphere of the world, in the oil and gas industry.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and during the time when I was in high school, looking to go into college, it, the oil industry here was like I would say at its peak or one of its peaks.
Okay.
Like was have to ebb and flow in the industry. But not to digress too much. So I was gonna do petroleum engineering, and then uh, a gentleman who he's a director of a medical company. Um, he interacted with me and he told me, you're quite smart enough to be a doctor. I was like, I don't believe. So he's like, why? And I said, well, I don't think I'll do well with patient blood and having to tell a patient family that their relative has passed on.
Yeah.
Well, have you heard about biomedical engineering? I was like, no, what is that? He's like, well, think of like a doctor of of equipment. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, I mean, it was like such the best layman's term I've ever heard or terminology for what a biomedical engineer does. And he piqued my interest and I looked into it and I was like, wow. I saw that at that point in time it was one of the fields I was gonna had the best trajectory of growth. And I made a transition in terms of like what schools I was looking at, and to this day I don't regret it. So I had a beautiful educational background and exposure to the field. So yeah, to this day I still thank him for putting that seed in my brain to make the switch.
Did so did you go to college, university in Trinidad, or did you go out of country?
I went out of country, so I had the opportunity with a government scholarship to take it abroad and do study. I did my undergraduate at the University of Toronto,
Hmm.
with the engineering science program that was primarily focused on biomedical engineering. And then I did my master's thereafter, after a gap year at University of London. City University of London. They're now under the umbrella of University of London. I did it more focused on healthcare technology management. Um, Same biomedical engineering field, but as you know, biomedical engineering encompasses several spheres in healthcare. So, yeah, um,
Yeah, Toronto had to be a little different than Trinidad and Tobago going up there.
a rude awakening in terms of the. Yeah, so I mean, temperatures would like I always said like the apps, the weather apps, they lie to you. So it's like it'd be like -5, and then when you go outside, it feels like -4. So it was a rude awakening coming from a very very hot climate with no reprieve for any sort of like cool weather here. And um, yeah, it was beautiful, like having to get to experience something totally or drastically different, if I may.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's an interesting, dynamic. You go from somewhere that's always warm to Canada to get educated. So you probably had to purchase a lot of jackets when you got there.
I had to lay up a lot. Yeah. While the locals would maybe had like one or two jackets, I was probably with like four. you know.
Yeah,
Yeah. But after a while, you acclimatize well. So yeah.
yeah,
I remember at one point in time when it was starting to get warmer during the winter, and it like actually went above zero. I went outside with short pants. I got so accustomed, and like 1 degrees felt like like warm weather back home in Trinidad. So
yeah, yeah. No, it's amazing how the body can adjust like that. So jumping back into healthcare, you're in Trinidad and Tobago. Uh, I know you work heavily in, with some of the government and things throughout the Caribbean. What's being a U.S. based company? Obviously, we have a perspective on healthcare and what it's like here. How is healthcare different to us, like there in Trinidad and Tobago? What are some of the differences you see or know, or things that you could maybe share with the folks that listen?
oh yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'll start with the U.S. So the U.S. tends to operate healthcare like a commodity, right? So you basically pay for it through your insurance, and depending on the insurance coverage that you have, it confers the amount of like benefits that you may have or cost savings, right?
Hmm.
So you still have to pay for it essentially. But here in Trinidad, it's actually a free for all mechanism, right? So you don't have to pay for your healthcare. Um, In terms of the hospital structure, there's a public sector that's free in the public sector, and there's also a private sector. In the US, is primarily private, right? Privately driven.
Hmm.
In the private sector, well, you would have to pay for it. But the downside of this free for all structure is that what happens is that you tend to have long waiting times. If you're waiting for like a surgery or even a simple day surgery, you can wait up to months for it, right? So
Wow.
that's the downside of a free for all structure, which kind of coerces a patient or their families to have to look to the private sector, private hospitals, and pay out of pocket. Um, there is private insurance here in Trinidad, but the penetration is quite low,
Hmm.
right? The accessibility, and then of course those who can afford it. It's only a certain economic bracket of people who can, pay out of pocket or have the ability to have an insurance coverage that would be able to, um, at least offset some of the cost of healthcare. So that's it in a nutshell. Um, in terms of like procurement of medical equipment, there's also a difference, of course, because it's privately driven in the US. The hospitals, they undertake a lot of the capital purchases on their own, as opposed to in Trinidad, you have the Ministry of Health that oversees the allocations to the respective public hospitals in Trinidad. So in Trinidad, actually, the public hospitals have fallen under several authority umbrellas.
Hmm.
So each authority covers like a region or county here, and they overlook certain facilities based on the geographic location. Um, so so their purchases are driven. So basically, they would have to like do budget allocation. So like and put it forward to the Ministry of Health to get cabinet approval later on. Um, so, but in the U.S., because they're privately driven, um, the hospitals with their direct procurement. There's also IDN or integrated delivery networks or GPOs. I guess you
Hmm.
may fall in that category as well, where
Yeah.
they can get bundle savings if they're a group of hospitals or they assign like a GPO organization to handle the procurement for them.
Hmm.
That's the main difference. But when it comes to like the procurement and evaluation of the equipment, how it's set up here is that you try to get value for the most. And what tends to happen is that um, you want to spend less, but you want to get more, right?
Yeah.
That's one. And the second thing is that we tend to only look at the initial expenditure, right? Which I really love the U.S. Uh, framework, how they do procurement, because they look at it as a value-based model, right? So not only the initial capital expenditure, but they look at the overall life cycle costs and um, this keyword reimbursement, right? See if
Hmm.
there's a billing code in terms of like getting reimbursement through whatever um, whatever uh, caregiving they can get from the piece of equipment. Um, if there's no reimbursement to be conferred, then it's not going to be a good buy, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the differences here. So, but of course that will percolate into different challenges here as well when it comes to like tendering and procurement of medical equipment. The other thing too is that in the U.S., because a lot of manufacturers are based there, right?
Hmm.
They have direct access to manufacturers. Here we have to depend on local distributor networks. Um, and then because we're a small island, we're made up of small islands here in the Caribbean. Our purchasing power is not that great, so
Hmm.
like getting value for your money is quite hard because you don't have the numbers.
Yeah.
So what tends to happen is that we have to like sort of like manage our equipment, our and even our infrastructure right down to end of life. Basically, and it's not really the best model. Um, but you have to make do with the situation. You have to be ingenious in how do your repairs, do your maintenance, and so forth.
Yeah. I was going to ask, because of that, is it, obviously you're kind of, like you said, out there on an island. Does that make it more difficult, the costs because of shipping and all those kind of things?
Well, yeah, some countries like they don't have a proper port or facilities, so of course you'd have to use like Trinidad because where Trinidad is located is sort of like a dynamic location where ships come here, they dock and do like transshipment. So it's a transshipment point
Okay.
here. So some islands further up north, and who in the Caribbean belt, who may not have access to a port or anything like that, will have to rely on shipping through our country. So of course that drives up the cost, right?
Yeah.
But as for us here, like our shipping cost is not as exorbitant, but still we're still at the mercy of in terms of the cost of equipment and economies of scale as well,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
No, it's different than loading something up on a semi truck and driving it 5 hours. It's actually got to get onto a ship and have multiple stops and all these kind of things on its way to get to you folks. So yeah, it makes total sense.
Another thing, because we're always looking for value, and the fact that we don't have a regulatory agency like FDA, what tends to happen, it creates this open market. So, of course, you would see it's easy to penetrate a market like Trinidad. So,
Mm.
from China, Asia, Turkey, and of course, shipping from those countries is not that cheap, right?
Yeah.
So, so unless you're buying in bulk quantities and stuff like that, of course, you would get some savings. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And that kind of segues into one of my other questions are what are some of the challenges that are faced in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago? I know we just talked about logistics and economies of scale. What are some of the other challenges in healthcare that the folks down there face?
So of course, like having the budget for maintaining infrastructure is quite challenging.
Hmm.
Um, like a lot of the infrastructure is old, generally, right? So there's a lot of need for upkeep and bringing hospitals to a higher standard, right? For instance, like how the US would benchmark on the Joint Commission or AIA, FGI.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of drive for it here locally, but there's new healthcare projects, doing expansion projects,
Hmm.
right? The downside is that while you're trying to like provide healthcare for all, um, there's also overlooking the aspect of like maintaining what you currently have, right? So there needs to be a balance. So that's one of the missteps there. We tend to also have to rely on like things like IDB funding, interdevelopment bank funding, WHO, PAHO. Um, Again, because it's not a predominantly rich region, right? So the economies are quite small and stuff. So that's one of the challenges of as well. Having to wait on these fundings and stuff. So what you tend to see is that the timelines in which a country may be able to do a new hospital project, it tends to be longer, right? And that even transcends into our procurement. Our procurement time tends to be quite long as well,
Yeah.
right? So as opposed to being directly accessible to a manufacturer in North America, where you can get your stuff done like within a month or so, depending on the complexity of the equipment. Here you have to wait from as low as 3 months up to a year,
Yeah.
right? So those things are quite challenging. And in the medical equipment sphere, if you wait so long, especially on projects, um, products can become obsolete.
Yeah.
Configurations can change.
Yeah.
So, and already working with a tight budget, having to work with those variation challenges, those variational costs, um, could be. You have to find ingenious ways to do some value engineering. So,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's it's a whole different dynamic than what we
yeah,
would deal with here in the States.
hmm definitely.
Tell us a little bit about Provias and how that started, and we've gotten a little bit of a background on the overall healthcare environment down there. I'd like to know a little bit about your company and how that came about.
Well, that's a really good question. So, I mean, well, first of all, you have to be passionate about something that. Well, for me, on a personal level, I think like you have to be really passionate about what you do as a career. Like if
Yeah.
I don't have passion, it makes no sense I'm doing it. Having worked in the healthcare field, you see a lot of things that you wanna improve, that you know that you can probably give some sort of impact to.
Yeah.
Um, and then one of the things as well, having been given a national scholarship by the government, there's this intrinsic need to want to give back,
Yeah.
make a good mark on the healthcare sector.
Hmm.
Uh, through my observations, I know that I want to make a difference somewhere, and I know exactly where the differences need to be made, especially where it relates to medical equipment and capital projects and stuff like that. Um, I told myself, let me bite the bullet and you know go off on my own and be an entrepreneur and see where this goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a risk, but with risk, there's some rewards and benefits. So
Yeah.
uh, So yeah, it's been a nice challenge so far.
Yeah. So, give us a little breakdown of the services. Obviously, you've got the biomedical background, and so you have that expertise. But let the listeners know kind of some of the things that you work on and projects that you undertake. I know you've told me that you do some equipment planning for expansion and building projects and all that kind of stuff. So break that down a little bit for us.
All right, so I basically I try to not I try I do everything when it comes to every aspect of healthcare technology management, from the point of assessing a need to the point of decommissioning,
Yeah.
right? So you look at the needs. You involve in the medical equipment planning, looking at what types of equipment needs to be allocated to certain spaces, as
Hmm.
well as discussing with the stakeholders, understanding their needs, and of course advising them that sometimes their need may bring on all the bells and whistles on a piece of equipment, which they don't necessarily, right? And
Yeah.
then of course advising them, showing them like the cost of it over
Hmm.
time, what you would actually spend as opposed to what you should spend, and still achieve the benefit that you initially wanted. So
Yeah.
that's one. So it's not just medical equipment planning and saying, okay, yeah, you need these types of equipment in this room and everything.
Hmm.
Actually looking at it from not just that initial point of installation, but you're actually looking how it's going to be later down the road for you, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I look at medical equipment planning. The second thing is like lending technical advice for equipment troubleshooting. I mean
Hmm.
that's quite on a smaller scale. Working with contractors on healthcare projects, assisting them with pre-installation designs, looking at the hospital designs and ensuring that it accommodates the medical equipment functionality well.
Hmm.
Um, that's a heavy one as well. Even looking at compliance of the layouts in terms of if it aligns to FGI or international health facility guidelines,
Hmm.
or whatever guidelines that they incorporate in their contracts. I will ensure that it complies um, according to the project needs, because I mean if there's any miscompliance there, there can be some penalties incurred for proponents. So that's one of the things that I take great care and joy as well in doing as well.
Yeah. Well, on some of that stuff, you are like the Caribbean version of Merck, so that's why I think we get along so well because we see things so similar.
Yeah, especially when it comes to Arrivo and Mercato, like we definitely see the benefits of it and the applicability of it, not just in the US but also here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's great. I've in our conversations for the past 5 years, I've always enjoyed the conversations because it's like you have the same and similar vision to things that we have, and you're trying to bring that to your area, and I think that's really great. And I commend you as well for jumping out there as an entrepreneur to take it on because I'm sure it's needed.
yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you so much for that. But I mean, it's definitely needed because I know the impact that it can make in terms of like the cost savings, and especially in a market where budgets can be really tight and you have to be ingenious with your spend.
Yeah. So what's next for the company? What goals do you have and things like that?
So I want to continue working on projects and working closely with government agencies.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't want to just come on a project from the point of when a contract is awarded and you have to work with a contractor. I think the most benefit I can actually derive in the process is from working at the conceptual phase
Hmm.
and driving the employer requirements, the user brief development, um, especially things like technical specifications for medical equipment. You know, um, Sometimes they're too vague. Sometimes they align to different pieces of medical equipment that um, and you want to make it more performance based, right?
Yeah.
Get them to benchmark on things like ECRI, utilizing those tools, and deriving benefits at that process, because believe you me, if that could be done, it will be beneficial later down the road. Especially for healthcare projects. Um, Another thing is also looking at the model of healthcare projects. We tend to do the design build concept here, but I think given the need for a better maintenance model, I think we should start looking at design build and operate here. So what that does is that it encourages the proponent to operationalize the facility, and of course their payment is based on meeting those goals as well.
Yeah, that's great. Best of luck to you on all those things, and you know, we're in your corner.
Yeah. I'm definitely new corner as well. So
Yeah,
opportunities for you guys on this side. Best
yeah.
we can,
So
you know,
now
well,
being an entrepreneur and starting your own business, what's some advice you would have given to your teenage self now that you're into your career, and uh, what would you have coached your high school or teenage self to do?
yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't. This advice wouldn't be just for my teen self, but anyone
Yeah,
in general. So I'll give that advice and with that chain of thought. Life isn't a checklist, right? We tend to think that life is somewhat linear. At least in my age of growing up, we were taught,
hmm
you have to go to high school, you have to go to university, and like you have to check, right?
yeah,
But now the world is so open, and you have accessibility to different learnings and knowledge. As opposed to in my time, like our times, we didn't have AI and the huge internet of things where you can just access things right up to your fingertips.
yeah,
Because of that, like, just go with the ebbs of flow in life, but make sure you remain. If you're passionate about something, just keep that passion, because that passion inculcates a level of attitude towards success. And once you're
hmm
always in that drive, you'll reach far. Just don't lose track of that vision, because it's not a race. It's not even a marathon. It's more of like a squid game, if I may, because you never know what the next challenge would be, but you have to adapt to the challenge when it comes to you.
yeah.
So that's the advice I give to my teen self, or to anyone in particular. So
No, I like that whole passion thing. I think what happens when you are passionate about something, then the others that you are around, they see that, and that
yeah,
inspires them. So like if you were to come in and give a presentation to somebody and say, hey, I can help you with this equipment project or whatever it might be that you would be offering your services, that passion comes out. They're like, I want to work with Zovan because he knows what he's talking about. He cares about it. It's something I know he's going to deliver results.
definitely. And I mean, I'm happy you can see it, and it's not that I try to do that, but I guess it's just something in my nature that when it
Yeah,
comes to engineering and healthcare technology.
yeah, for sure. Well, what we usually like to do when we start to close things out on the podcast is talk about things on a personal note. We've heard a little bit about the country you're from and your
Mhm.
educational background and the things that you're doing in your company. Why don't you tell us about some of your passions outside of work? I know we just talked about passion being work, but some hobbies or things you like to do, and why don't you
Well,
share some of that?
my second biggest passion is actually cricket.
Oh,
I know cricket
awesome!
is not that big yet in the US, but it's going to
Yeah.
be there in 2020. It's in LA, so that's something quite exciting. Very very passionate about cricket. I am still an active player. I know with work sometimes I can't commit to a full season. Yeah, just to dive back into what we were talking about earlier, I got certified as a coach in cricket, um, and I want to continue getting more higher certifications, because I also have a passion for analytics.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
I love analytics, and I would love, honestly, I would love to do cricket analytics one day because I think I'm a natural at it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the coaching aspect, I also want to, you know, work with younger kids, and that's from a sporting aspect, but also from a looking at life, like being a good role model to them in terms of like their education, um, giving them that tap on their shoulder. It's okay to fail. Failure is actually a good thing. You just have to embrace it. You
Yeah.
know, just being a good teacher in that aspect, using sport as a teacher, and you know making a good impression on their minds.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we've discussed before. I'm a golfer, so I get it
Mm.
entirely. And I love sport, and I love how it can teach you so many lessons. Like just one of the things you said about failure. It's not a bad thing because the more you fail, it's a more opportunity you can learn. And the same applies in business. And the most successful people are the ones who've oftentimes failed the most. So
Yeah,
if we can just change our mindset to think, hey, this failure is just an opportunity to get better. I think so many people, if they could learn that, it'd free them up so much to be more successful.
and I think it's important for it to incubate that at that young age, so that when they
Hmm.
grow already have the requisites on their armor to face the challenges of the world, as opposed to being thrown in the deep end as a 20-something-year-old and like, okay, I don't know what to do, and you're like a fish out of water.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and I share your passion on the analytics things. You know that's kind of how we've built some of our platform as to be an analytics thing, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with baseball, but baseball here in the U.S. has just jumped all in on analytics, and the sport has changed dramatically because of it. And so, cricket kind of being a little bit similar to baseball, I'm sure there's a room for that as well.
definitely there's room for it, and I mean, there are cricket analysts that work with international teams and even
Yeah.
like the. So yeah, it's definitely a growing market in terms of that sphere. Other hobbies that I have is like, well, I work with a lot with the GPTs. I love playing around with prompt engineering GPTs and AI and seeing what kind of wonky things you can do with it, especially in when it comes to work
Yeah.
and yeah, especially in the medical engineering field. It's dabbling in it and seeing what it can do. It's quite an eye opener. So it's proving to be a challenge to my number one hobby, which is cricket. So
The cricket, just in general, is it really popular there in Trinidad and Tobago?
yeah, it's I would still like to say it's a number one sport. I mean,
Okay.
I have a passion for it. Um, like cricket is the one thing that unifies the Caribbean. It has
Okay.
proved the best unifying factor in the Caribbean, and
Even more so than something like soccer or something like that.
because the thing about it is that uh, we represent on an international scale as a conglomerate of all the islands,
Oh,
right?
okay.
But in terms of like soccer or football, if I mean, a track and
Yeah.
field represent on an international scale from our individual countries.
Okay.
So all of the islands collectively make up the West Indies team.
Oh,
It's
okay.
yeah, as opposed to Trinidad playing internationally on its own. No,
Yeah.
that's why it's a unifying force.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really neat. So, how successful is like the West Indies team on a international scale?
So that's the thing. So we were very successful up till like 30 years ago.
Okay.
But what is that the rest of the countries they started to invest in their cricket,
Mm,
and they outran us in terms of like our stuff like that. So while we
yeah.
have a lot of talent and whatnot, what we're lacking is an infrastructure and that solid foundation to really produce players to be really good on the international scale.
Yeah.
So So we have that challenges now. So as you know, like in the Caribbean here, our economies are quite small. So the our purchasing power, to really it's quite hard. So it's not just in healthcare; it's in all sectors.
Yeah,
Those challenges and those things tend to have a rippling or domino effect
yeah.
um, to other spheres. So
Well, you got to just start sending some pictures of, your beaches and locations to some of these top end cricketers to say, okay, here's what's available to you.
yeah, what have we? Yeah, because we have a lot of a diaspora, living in Australia and England, other countries. Like
Yeah.
can use that as a mechanism to get them to go.
Get some recruiting going on.
Uh,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Zovan, it was an absolute pleasure to have you. Uh, if there's anything else you want to share, go for it. But definitely anybody down in the Caribbean looking for a medical equipment expert, this is a great person to reach out to, and uh, definitely enjoy our conversations. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you over these last few years.
Same here. I mean, I can't end on a better footnote than that. So, and I said, yeah, and I just say ditto. And
Awesome. Well,
for having me, it's a pleasure, and I hope you can do this again.
yeah,
Plus,
maybe this will become a regular thing. We start doing a few things together, work on some projects together. Maybe we can share some of the successes we're having as well. So,
yeah, yeah. Those sex can really be beneficial to anyone who's looking to undertake projects on a similar scale. So,
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Zovan. It was a pleasure. And again, you've got the record right now for furthest distant guest. So we'll see if that how long that holds out.
well, yeah. I mean, I'm all for records being broken. So, uh,
Maybe we'll maybe one of these days you'll be off in South America somewhere doing a project, and we'll say, "Hey, let's set up the podcast there." So now we can break that record.
cross, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Sylvan. Sure appreciate it.
Same here. Thanks for having me again.